Namaste, Dhanavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Mahārāja, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 12, text 12. Tam evam shila sampanam brahmanyam dinavatsalam Goptaram dharma setunam menire pitaram praja. Dhruva Maharaj was endowed with all godly qualities. He was very respectful to the devotees of the Supreme Lord and very kind to the poor and innocent. And he protected religious principles. With all these qualifications, he was considered to be the direct father of all the citizens. Purport. The personal qualities of Dhruva Maharaj described herein are the exemplary qualities of a saintly king. Not only a king, but also the leaders of a modern democratic or impersonal government must be qualified with all these godly characteristics. Then the citizens of the state can be happy. It is clearly stated here that the citizens thought of Dhruva Maharaj as their father. As a child, depending on the able father, is completely satisfied, so the citizens of the state, being protected by the state or the king, should remain satisfied in every respect. At the present moment, however, there is no guarantee by the government of even the primary necessities of life in the state, namely the protection of the lives and property of the citizens. One word is very significant in this connection: Brahmanyam. Dhruva Maharaj was very devoted to the Brahmanas, who engage in the study of the Vedas and thereby know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are always busy propagating Krishna consciousness. The state should be very respectful to societies that distribute God consciousness all over the world, but unfortunately at the present moment, there is no state or government support given to such movements. As for good qualities, it is very difficult to find anyone in the state administration with any good qualities. The administrators simply sit in their administrative posts and say no to every request, as if they were paid to say no to the citizens. Another word, Dina Vatsalam, is very significant also. The state head should be very kind to the innocent. Unfortunately, in this age, at the state agents and presidents draw good salaries from the state, and they pose themselves as very pious, but they allow the running of slaughterhouses where innocent animals are killed. If we try to compare the godly qualities of Dhruva Maharaj to the qualities of modern statesmen, we can see that there is no actual comparison. Dhruva Maharaj was present in the Satya Yuga, as will be clear from the next verses. He was the ideal king in Satya Yuga. The government administration in this present Kali Yuga age is bereft of all godly qualities. Considering all these points, the people today have no alternative but to take to Krishna consciousness for protection of religion, life, and property. Text 13. Satrim Sadbharsha Sahasram Sashasakshiti Mandalam Bhogai Punyakshayam Korban Abhoghar Ashubhakshayam. Dhruva Maharaj ruled over this planet for 36,000 years. He diminished the reactions of pious activities by enjoyment, and by practicing austerities he diminished inauspicious reactions. Purport. That Dhruva Maharaj ruled over the planet for 36,000 years means that he was present in the Satya Yuga. Because in the Satya Yuga people used to live for 100,000 years. In the next Yuga, Treta Yuga, people used to live for 10,000 years. and in the next Yuga, Dwarpa Yuga, for 1,000 years. In the present age, in the Kali Yuga, the maximum duration of life is about 100 years. With the change of the yugas, the duration of life and memory, the quality of kindness, and all other good qualities diminish. There are two kinds of activities, namely pious and impious. By executing pious activities, one can gain facilities for higher material enjoyment. But due to impious activities, one has to undergo severe distress. A devotee, however, is not interested in enjoyment or affected by distress. When he is prosperous, he knows, I am diminishing the results of my pious activities. And when he is in distress, he knows, I am diminishing the reactions of my impious activities. A devotee is not concerned with enjoyment or distress. He simply desires to execute devotional service. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that devotional service should be apratihata, unchecked by the material conditions of happiness or distress. The devotee undergoes processes of austerity such as observing Ekadasi and similar other fasting days and refraining from illicit sex life, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. Thus he becomes purified from the reactions of this past impious life, and because he engages in devotional service, which is the most pious activity, he enjoys life without separate endeavor. Text 14. Evam bahu sabham kalam Mahatma vichalhendriya Trivargopayikam nitva Putraya danrapashanam. The self-controlled great soul Dhruva Maharaj thus passed many, many years favorably executing three kinds of worldly activities, namely religiosity, economic development, and satisfaction of all material desires. Thereafter, he handed over the charge of the royal throne to his son. Purport. Perfection of a materialistic life is suitably attained by the process of observing religious principles. This leads automatically to successful economic development, and thus there is no difficulty in satisfying all material desires. Since Dhruva Maharaj as a king had to keep up his status quo, where it would not have been possible to rule over the people in general, he did it perfectly. But as soon as he saw that his son was grown up and could take charge of the royal throne, he immediately handed over charge and retired from all material engagements. One word used here is very significant, avichalendriya, which means that he was not disturbed by the agitation of the senses, nor was his sensory power diminished, although in years he was a very old man. Since he had ruled over the world for 36,000 years, naturally one may conclude that he became very, very old, but factually his senses were very young, and yet he was not interested in sense gratification. In other words, he remained self-controlled. He performed his duties perfectly according to the materialistic way, that is, the way of behavior of great devotees. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, one of the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya, was the son of a very rich man. Although he had no interest in enjoying material happiness, when he was entrusted with doing something in managing the state, he did it perfectly. Srila Gaurasundar advised him, from within keep yourself and your mind completely aloof, but externally execute the material duties just as they need to be done. This transcendental position can be achieved by devotees only. And as described in Bhagavad Gita, while others, such as yogis, try to control their senses by force, devotees, even though possessing full sensory powers, do not use them because they engage in higher transcendental activities. Text 15. Manyamana idam vishvam maya rachitam atmani avidya rachita svapna Gandharva Nagaropamam. Srila Dhruva Maharaj realized that this cosmic manifestation bewilders living entities like a dream or phantasmagoria because it is a creation of the illusory, external energy of the Supreme Lord. Purport. In the deep forest, it sometimes appears that there are big palaces and nice cities. That is technically called Gandharva Nagara. Similarly, in dreams, also, we create many false things out of imagination. A self-realized person or a devotee knows well that this material cosmic manifestation is a temporary, illusory representation appearing to be truth. It is like a phantasmagoria, but behind this shadow creation, there is reality, a spiritual world. A devotee is interested in the spiritual world, not its shadow. Since he has realization of the supreme truth, a devotee is not interested in this temporary shadow of truth. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Param Dristva Nivartate. Text 16. Atmastriyaptya surido balam mridha kosham antapuram parivihara bhuvascharamya bhumandalam jalhadi mekalam makalaya kalopashrishtamiti sa prayaya vishalam. Thus Dhruva Maharaj at the end left his kingdom, which extended all over the earth and was bounded by the great oceans. He considered his body, his wives, his children, his friends, his army, his rich treasury, his very comfortable palaces, and his many enjoyable pleasure grounds to be creations of the illusory energy. Thus, in due course of time, he retired to the forest in the Himalayas known as Badari, Badari, okay.
Badarika Shrama.
Yes, Badarik Ashram. Yes. Purport. Thank you, Prabhu. Purport. In the beginning of this life, in the beginning of Dhruva Maharaj's life, when he went to the forest in search of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Dhruva Maharaj realized that all bodily conceptions of pleasure are products of the illusory energy. In the very beginning, of course, he was after the kingdom of his father, and in order to get it, he went to search for the Supreme Lord. But he later realized that everything is a creation of the illusory energy. From the acts of Srila Dhruva Maharaj, we can understand that somehow or other, if one becomes Krishna conscious, it does not matter what his motivation is in the beginning. He will eventually realize the real truth by the grace of the Lord. In the beginning, Dhruva Maharaj was interested in the kingdom of his father, but later he became a great devotee of Bhagavat and had no interest in material enjoyment. The perfection of life can be achieved only by devotees. Even if one completes only a minute percentage of devotional service, and then falls down from his immature position, he is better than a person who fully engages in the fruitive activities of this material world. Text 17. Tasyam vishuddhakarana shivhavarvigyaha padasvashanam jitamarumana sakricha stule dadhara bhagavat pratirupa itad tyanyam stad avyayavito vyasrajat sammado. In the Badari Ashram, Dhruva Maharaj's senses became completely purified because he bathed regularly in the crystal clear purified water. He fixed his sitting position and by yogic practice controlled the breathing process and the air of life. In this way his senses were completely withdrawn. Then he concentrated his mind on the Archa Vigraha form of the Lord, which is the exact replica of the Lord, and thus meditating upon him, entered into complete trance. Purport. Here is a description of the Ashtanga Yoga system, to which Dhruva Maharaj was already accustomed. Ashtanga yoga was never meant to be practiced in a fashionable city. Dhruva Maharaj went to Bhadarashrama, and in a solitary place, alone, he practiced yoga. He concentrated his mind on the Archa Vigraha, the worshipable deity of the Lord, which exactly represents the Supreme Lord, and thus thinking constantly of that deity, he became absorbed in trance. Worship of the Archa Vigraha is not idol worship. The Archa Vigraha is an incarnation of the Lord in a form appreciable by a devotee. Therefore, devotees engage in the temple in the service of the Lord as the Archa Vigraha, the form made of stula, material objects, such as stone, metal, wood, jewels, or paint. All of these are called stula, or physical representations. Since the devotees follow the regulative principles of worship, even though the Lord is there in his physical form, he is non-different from his original spiritual form. Thus, the devotee gets the benefit of achieving the ultimate goal of life, that is to say, becoming always absorbed in thought of the Lord. This incessant thought of the Lord, as prescribed in Bhagavad Gita, makes one the topmost yogi. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 18 on Monday. Were there any comments or questions from the assembled devotees? Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj ki jai.
Jai,
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj ki jai.
Jai,
Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. All
Jai,
glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhaktivedanta ki jai.
Jai,
Jai Navadvip Dham ki jai.
Jai,
Nishringapali Dham ki jai. Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai.
Jai,
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju ki jai.
Jai,
Gangamai Yamuna Mai ki jai.
Jai,
Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham ki jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund ki jai.
Jai,
Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi ki jai.
Jai,
Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai,
Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai.
Jai,
Scientific Sankirtan Yagya ki jai.
Jai,
Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute ki jai.
Jai,
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute ki jai.
Jai,
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai.
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Pimanandi Hari Hari Hari
Hare,
Bol. Jai Shripadananda Krishna Prabhu ki jai.
Jai, Sripad Krishna Keshava Prabhu ki Jai.
Jai Gurudev. Prabhu, my dandavats to you.
My Dandavas for you also.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.